where I am is super dark sky, which is terrifying when you're driving at night, but but the payoff is amazing. If I come home later on when it's really dark and I'll drive up to the property and shut down the car and it's just like...
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 99. If you'd like more information about the podcast, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com, and I invite you to engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, or on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. Kim Fulleman is a space cowgirl from Hollywood that rode her cosmic horse to Landers about a year ago. Kim is a musician, outdoors woman, astronomy fancier, vegan feminist, and hemp activist. Music is life and the desert is love. She's not here to make sense, but would love to make a difference. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Great. So I know a little bit about how your desert story formulated because about, 6 or 8 months ago, we met at the Bazaar in Landers, and I did a quick 5-minute interview with you. But for someone listening for the first time, what was your first experience with desert?
Well, I was lucky enough to, as a kid, be involved with Girl Scouts, and
me too.
Very much so. On my honor, I will try.
Exactly.
We could go to the whole thing. Yes. So, we got to do a lot of camping and things like that. My first definite, vivid memory was, I think I was about 10, and it was here in Joshua Tree.
Cool.
And me and my friend would find the biggest, most obnoxious rock formation we could find, and we would just climb it. We didn't have ropes. We didn't have anything. We had a fanny pack with water and a granola bar. And that's what we would do. We climbed it, and I'm kind of amazed that we made it because there were some terrifying moments.
Well, there's a lot of that no fear thing going on when you're about 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. and we got to the top, and we looked down, and below us was this adult climber with full ropes looking up at us in just astonishment and kind of worry, like, what are these kids doing, climbing this thing. So, and that was my most vivid memory of the desert and camping there in general. And we made it to the top, and we came back down, and I don't even think the adults knew. That's just how parenting kind of was back then. If anything happened, they would have been there, but we made it, and we made it back, and just, it's a beautiful place, and it always has had a special place in my heart, since the beginning. And then throughout childhood, from coming out here to going in, with the church groups to Ridgecrest and doing performances there and choir and things like that. That's another memory of another part of the desert, going there and performing with the churches, and then staying with people in their homes. And that
that's interesting. Was that through a church that you attended in where you grew up?
Yes.
And where did you grow up?
That's kind of a whole other thing. Yeah. I grew up in Rossmore, which is by Seal Beach, Los Alamitos area. Seal Beach. Yeah.
So pretty. Yeah.
It hasn't changed really much since I grew up there.
It's super small. Well, growing up in Jersey and going to those little beach towns on the Jersey Shore.
Oh, yeah.
I went there one time, and we were sitting in a bar, and they had the windows open. There was a community concert happening, the ocean's behind it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm home,
Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet, because it's a very small town.
Right, exactly.
And it still is, because they like to keep it like that. Yeah. And then, and as a kid, that was how our family, we were Lutheran, went to church, and I was always into music, so choir was the thing that I most could identify with, because otherwise I really didn't identify with the church itself, but through music, and I had a great choir teacher that saw that I was identifying with like gospel music and things like that. So he brought in some gospel music and that kind of thing. And so we got to do that and then tour with the choir.
That's so interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard about a touring church choir.
Yeah. It was when we were in high school, and we got lucky with that one. I know that's a little going off the desert topic, I guess, but
okay, but it's interesting.
But it wasn't. We did have a lot of things in the desert, and even went up to Fresno in the desert, and that that area too. But it was that was another memory of Ridgecrest was that, and I guess it's relevant now after they had
exactly
that
after the earthquake,
and everything like that, and it was very different then. I'm imagining than it is now.
Oh, I'm sure. So then let's fast forward to almost a year ago, And when I spoke to you in October, you were just freshly in the desert for like 4 months. So how did that decision happen? I'm going to pick up my life in Hollywood and move out to the desert.
Yeah, it was a big decision. And at the time, before I decided to do this, I was living in a 400 square foot apartment that overlooked a brick wall. And I lived there
I'm going to show you a picture in a little bit of my 380 square feet downtown.
Oh, it was probably very, very similar.
Yeah.
And I've been there,
place,
you know. It served me well, and I had really great neighbors for a while. It was wonderful. But I lived there for 20 years. You know, and anywhere you live for that long, it's like you just need to shake it up. And I was ready for a change. Yeah. It had kind of like anything, you know, it just run its course. And I was starting to go, you know, what do I want to do? And I had an opportunity to maybe look into buying. And I'd always wanted to buy a home and to have my own thing. And I had been starting to go camping more and start doing more naturey things again through a bunch of various circumstances. That's a whole nother, we go into a whole other podcast of that journey, you know, how that happened. But in a nutshell, I was ready for a change, even if it was a drastic change. Yeah. And so I started looking into Joshua Tree, and Joshua Tree was growing so much. And I did make a bid on a place in Joshua Tree and just got way outbid. So I thought,
welcome to the club.
Yeah. So a friend of mine said, why don't you look into Landers? She had a place in Landers. And so I thought, oh, she told me where to go and to drive around. And I drove around and just fell in love with it. And so I made just kind of, not on a whim, but just kind of on a whim, made a bid, and it went through, and just kind of picked up and came out here. And you know, I thought about it and how should I, but sometimes you just have to do it. Sometimes you just, I'm not saying everyone should do that for everything in life, but for me, I did think it out and I did think it through, and it was time for a change. And I wanted to be in nature, and I wanted to heal from kind of things that I had gone through in life and that I'd put myself through in life, and just be happy and get some peace and quiet.
You got quiet.
I got quiet, and I also got adventure, and I also got, you know, a lot of things that I had no idea that was going to happen, but that's part of the fun.
So talk about your first 2-3 months shifting from life of Hollywood to life in Landers.
Oh my gosh. Well, I came in the summer. I moved permanently on June 1st. Wow. And so it was, I kind of like jumped into the belly of the whale in a certain way. But now I love this. Like, we'll go into that later. I showed up on June 1st, and one of the first things that kind of happened was my cooler went out.
Of course.
And so we went into this whole thing, and through a series of circumstances, I kind of ended up temporarily with a tiny air conditioner in my bedroom, just cooling the bedroom, and that's it. Yeah. And that's how I spent the rest of the summer. And so everything else in the house just melted. You know, I have these melted candles in the kitchen, and I didn't cook really. I was trying to cook and all this. And salad. Yeah, I just kind of prepared whatever I could, and the roots were coming through, and the plumbing, and things are going, you know, and it was a learning.
For sure.
On the other hand, I was also figuring out how solid the house was that I was on, because the winds were coming through, and these other things, all the things that you learn to get used to were starting. And also, the other thing that was new to me that now is just something to expect was the explosions from the military base.
Oh, yeah.
That was the other thing. Oh my gosh. Because where I live, kind of on the north end of Landers, almost to Johnson Valley. So right in that valley, it echoes when they're doing the military training in 29 Palms. And so at first, the windows would just rattle, and I would, you know, I'm texting my friend going, we're both texting, what's going on, you know, and then people were posting, and they're just doing exercises, okay, you know, and now I'm kind of obsessed with it, you know. I'll have my binoculars out, and I'm looking into the valley, and I'm looking at the lights going on, you know, above the mountains and stuff. That's like so that. Funny. Yeah. And, you know, it's fascinating.
Well, I used to house sit for a guy who's on the south side of Joshua Tree, but his windows from his living room face north. And if you put the binoculars up, I mean, without that, you can see that village that they have set up out there that they do their maneuvers in. Oh, yeah. And I'm dying to be up there one night when that's happening and whip those binoculars out and just kind of see what that all looks like when they're doing it.
Yes.
Because I've never seen it.
Yes.
So to your point.
Absolutely.
I'm really
A
anxious
friend
to
of
do
mine
that.
has a house out by that area where you can see it. And I was dog sitting for them.
Okay.
And I swear, I was out there with the binoculars, just
Right.
like trying to see whatever I could.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, if I lived here, it's probably a good thing I don't, because I would just spend my time just watching.
Well, that's the thing,
buildings.
even with that going on, I find that to be a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's a different distraction from like social media and things like that. It's kind of a good distraction because, I'll be sitting here any one night and you look out the window and you can just see just the color of the sky and you're like, I need to get out and look at that.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's every night. Every night's like that. It's true. I always stop what I'm doing at golden hour. And it's hard to describe to people that don't live here. I wouldn't have been able to understand it before I lived here.
Exactly.
And it's something that you feel. I don't even know what time it is. I'll just be sitting at home and all of a sudden I'll just feel it and I'll look outside. Sure enough, it's golden hour, and then I'll just go sit outside, or I'll do some yard work because I'll know it's cool enough to do yard work. That's a good time to get it done, and then I'll feel good that I'm at least getting something done and not just sitting, So that's and also
it's amazing.
I enjoy being up in the morning too. If I happen to accidentally get up around 5:30 or whatever around that time, I'll get out of bed and go just look outside just to see, are the clouds out? What kind of sunrise is it going to be? Is it going to be a Hawaiian punch sunrise, or is it going to be one of those like cloudy sunrises? You know, that kind of thing. I could stare at the sky for hours.
And then on into the night because, I've got a little bit of light pollution, probably not as much as most people, but you probably have barely any up there.
None. Yeah. Where I am is super dark sky, which is terrifying when you're driving at night, but but the payoff is amazing. If I come home later on when it's really dark and I'll drive up to the property and shut down the car and it's just like I can't go in. I can't go inside. I'll just have to go sit outside and stare at the sky and look at the stars, and it's something I never experienced in my life before. Even, in traveling you see it sometimes, but it's not the same as just being able to walk outside, and it's my favorite thing. And I also have trees too, and that's the other thing. I have pepper trees that, again, I can just watch the pepper trees sway for hours, and I actually don't have a TV right now, and I brought my TV from Hollywood that I used to just hook up the regular old box that and I thought, I'll just bring out my converter box. And, you don't do that in Landers. You ding dong. So I tried to do that. It didn't work, and that's okay. So I'll get it eventually. But now I'm quite entertained watching bunnies and the trees in the sky.
I was going to ask if you've had any critter experiences.
So many.
Yeah.
So many critter experience. I've talked to my friend who's a tattoo artist about doing a full sleeve of all the critters that have lived on my
graced your
everything
place.
From we've had since I have trees, we're in the migratory path of turkey vultures. I had 2 different kinds of owls in one tree. Like there was a great horned and a great eared, a long eared. Oh, my friends are gonna kill me for not knowing. They taught me so much. But all kinds of, it's in the middle of some kind of migratory pattern of a lot of different birds, and I've had a hawk living in another one, and of course bunnies, coyotes, not some fun, so insects, rats, you name it, but you take it all.
But that is the desert too.
Absolutely.
I mean, those are all, that's their home, and that's, just what to expect, I guess, here. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all try to live together, and everyone's just trying to live.
Yeah, I've told the story before on the podcast, but believe it or not, I've actually had a snake in this apartment.
No.
Yeah, because there's a little gap underneath that screen door. And it was like 2.5 months, not even. I was sitting on that couch reading, and all of a sudden, here comes a snake underneath to the back of the TV, and I went, oh no, what just, So we talked to each other, and I got the broom out and strategized and got him out the door.
Wow.
So it makes me happy to be even this close to like civilization, and I still get roadrunners and the rabbits, and I had desert iguanas out here, and the snake in the house isn't the best, but I had a lizard in the house for a couple of days. I said, well, eat up what you want and move on.
It's just chilling. I love I do like having the lizards and the iguanas because they eat critters. That's amazing.
That's embarrassing. That's my news alarm.
Oh.
That's my stop at noon and figure out what's going on in the world. And today
there
it's,
you go.
you know,
There's tons of stuff going
on. Sometimes we don't want to hear any of it.
No.
And this is a good place to be to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. Because then you can pick and choose what you want to hear and when you want to hear it.
Yeah.
But
so 20 years in Hollywood.
yes.
What were you doing all that time in Hollywood?
Kind of you name it. I am a musician by trade. I started as a professional musician when I was about 19.
Wow.
So with all the trappings of that, which means you work as a musician, but then there's also off time. So I also worked at a record label for almost a decade as well.
Neat.
Then I also worked in TV production. And then in the early days when I was starting off, I did all the great jobs and not great jobs as like security guards, bartenders, hostesses, you know, all those, everything you could kind of think of, just because I just wanted money to have fun, you know, and pay my rent and do everything. But yeah, so it's kind of been, you do everything in Hollywood that you can do. Dog sitting on the side just for friends because, you know, I love not just dogs, pets.
Right.
Snakes, I snake sat,
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness.
even, you know, for friends because I would be the only person who would do that. You know, they're like, no one I know wants to do that. So yeah, I would kind of, I do have a lot of different interests, so it's hard for me sometimes to focus on one thing because, you know, now I'm currently taking like 3 Udemy classes because, again, I'm just like, what do I, because out here, you know, there's so many, you got to kind of try and figure out where to go, you know.
What kind of classes are you taking?
Oh, right now it's things like Facebook marketing and social media marketing because there's a lot of businesses around here that are not quite savvy on those kind of things. So I thought I'd like to do something remotely so that I can, you know, adopt animals and stay home and do fun things like, plus I live in the middle of nowhere. So it'd be fun to be able to do that and to be able to play music and write music and those kind of things as well.
Have you started playing while you've been out here?
Not quite yet, you know. I was just talking to some friends yesterday about some collaborations.
Oh,
and
great.
things like that. So we're getting there. It's just finding the niche and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of starting all over again. But there's so much inspiration out here. I almost went in the direction of writing poetry just because there's so much going on, and I know there's not really, you know, you can't be a professional poet, but you can channel it. You know,
exactly. Well, and I don't know
know
if you know that there's an organization called Choya Needles here in Joshua Tree, and they do at Space Cowboy, the stage in the back in Sun Alley, they do poetry reading at least once a month.
Oh.
So write that stuff and bring it down here, and then there are some folks there who do some self-publishing.
Oh, wow.
So I highly recommend that you go over to the Choya Needles thing and check that out.
I will. That's really cool.
Yeah. So
see, there's really something for everyone out here. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
now,
wonderful.
as a musician, what instrument do you play?
I am a singer and a bass player professionally. Kind of started off at 5 on piano and did the piano lesson route and all that stuff. But I wanted to play like Great Balls of Fire and stuff like that. And my teacher was not having it, you know. So I kind of went, I don't want to do that.
Did you listen to Lisa Ray Black's podcast?
Yes. I loved her. She is amazing. I've heard her play.
Yeah, I just went to see them at Gotti's the first time I've seen Hammer of the Oz, and I was blown away.
Yeah,
She's
great. She's just blinding.
But it reminded me of that because she said that she was studying with a guitar teacher who was a classical flamenco player. And she said they would come in and all they would do would be like clap to the metronome and all that stuff, and then she'd go home and she wouldn't even play, and then she came in and was playing like a Chuck Berry lick, which when you said Great Balls of Fire, I was like, oh my God, they need to meet each other because she said he was not having it either.
Yeah, it's true. And I get it. That's what they feel is music. And when your parents do that, they think they're doing the right thing to get you trained classically. And so everyone did the right thing, what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the little rebels want to do our own thing. So, and we did. Eventually, both of us kind of went our own way and did our own thing. And so all is as it should be in the world. And so it never left. You know, I kind of still played and became more of a fan of music and big time. Like I was that kid with all the posters of every, this band, just ridiculous. And my friends laugh at me because I really like a super fan is a not
overstatement.
Yes, really not even starting to get there. That's part of the whole thing. And then someone saw me singing harmonizing with my friend at a show just for fun and asked me to be in their band.
That's cool.
And she said, well, I want you to sing with me. She said, and our bass player just quit. And she said, but if you want to play, she said, you don't have to play bass, but if you want to learn, we need a bass player. And I said, sure, I'll learn bass.
Wow.
And I was, obviously a keyboard player. I could do that from playing piano. So the first gig that we played, I did a Doors style and played the bass on the keyboards.
Okay.
And then learned bass for the next gig. And then that was how I ended up learning bass. But I had no idea. I didn't even know, to be honest, I really didn't know what a bass was. As a huge music fan, I couldn't tell you what a bass was, like what it sounded like, what a bass line was, until I had to play it, and I went, oh.
Yeah, and for me, that's like the coolest part of the music.
Oh, now
it's the bass line.
Yeah, that's the groove. That's like it's a very important part of the whole thing. I know I'm saying that as a bass player and tooting my own horn,
but it is, and you and the drummer have to really be in sync and on the same page to drive the music.
Yeah. I've talked about this before. You can have 4 great musicians that sound horrible together. You can't just interchange.
If you're not listening to each other.
I mean, I played with great drummers where we just haven't grooved with that kind of music specifically. It doesn't mean they're not a great drummer. It's just it's not interchangeable all of the time. You have to find the right music and all that stuff.
Now, I did a little bit of research. And were you in an all-female punk band?
Not
or
all
a mostly female. Oh, okay.
I've been in a couple. Yeah, I've been in a bunch of bands. But yeah, I was in a band that was like 3/4 female.
Okay.
So yeah. Are you talking about the Distillers?
Yes.
Yeah. We were 3/4, 3 women in the front, and then a male drummer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it started off as a 3-piece. It started off as bass, guitar, and drums.
Oh, okay.
And then 2 vocalists in the front. The guitarist, sorry, I'm touching the table.
That's
the
okay.
Guitarist joined.
If you touch it lightly, it won't make a difference, but you'll hurt people's ears if you touch it harder.
I won't do that anymore. And then the second guitarist joined before we recorded the album.
Okay.
So
nice. And did you tour with that?
Oh, yeah. I was in the band for a couple years.
Okay.
The first couple years.
All right. Were there any, one particular place that you played and you were like, wow, that was it. That was the best. Crowd-wise, venue-wise.
There's so many. It's hard to say. I mean, touring itself is like a whole crazy adventure just because it's different every day. I will say I love doing the work tour, and I guess I'll say it's relevant now because they just did a show, like a reunion kind of show, just the other day. Because it's like camp. You get to hang out with other bands that you're either fans of or that you're friends with, and you all just hang out together. We just had such a good time. It's physically, it's incredibly hard. And we did it in a van in the middle of the summer. And you play places like Nashville and Florida. Like, I know that's not a city, but you play,
I get it.
You play places that are very, very hot in the middle of August.
In a van.
So it's physically very, very hard, but man, it is so much fun. And the crowds are crazy and a bunch of kids just flying around and having a great time.
Yeah.
So Warped Tour, I've got to say, is probably the most, the one that just pops out. Yeah.
Now, you were also with another band, Punk is Dead.
Oh!
And put out some album with some Grateful Dead covers done in punk ways. It was called One Hesher, Two Punks, and a Hippie.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so funny you bring that up. That is a dear friend of mine, Jeff. We worked together at Epitaph Records, which is an amazing label that is still around doing amazingly well. And there's a song about Jeff. The band NoFX has a song about Jeff called Jeff Wears Birkenstocks because he is a punk hippie hybrid and he works at a punk label, but he also loves the Grateful Dead. And so that's what the song is about, is that hybrid. And so Jeff took it to the streets, so to speak, and started a band called Punk is Dead, where it's Grateful Dead songs done punk style.
And I listened to a couple of them on YouTube. If you want to listen, you can find them. They're actually pretty cool.
It was really fun. I just was in it for we just did an album and a couple shows just for fun. Man, I love playing those songs like that. Just because a well-written song
Yeah.
And I've always said this too. A well-written song can be played anyway. You know, that's why you hear songs that can be played acoustically that are just as well played as electrically, because they're just well written.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's a good sign of that.
And sometimes it puts such a different spin on it, and it affects you even differently. If you are a person who is affected by music,
Yeah.
it can really change what you're hearing.
Yeah.
And really make it deeper, maybe a deeper experience done a different way.
Oh, sure. I didn't know the original bass line. Like, I like the Dead, but I'm not like a Deadhead. You know, I had a phase.
Right.
I had a phase, definitely. I have seen them. You know, I did see them before Jerry passed, and it was an amazing experience. But I wasn't like super involved with it. And so I came in more of a punk bass player aesthetic kind of thing. And so it wasn't anything like the originals, you know, and I think that was a good
appeal.
thing, you know, in that way, because it wasn't, and I didn't want to follow it. I didn't listen to them too much because I didn't want to follow it too much. I wanted
exactly.
to bring my own
bring
kind
your
of
own
thing
thing
into
to it.
You
Yeah.
know? But yeah, and the guys in the band are just the best dudes too. You know, I love them. Like, they're like my brothers, you know, and Jeff, I've known him forever, and he's one of my favorite people in the world.
Well, and that makes it more fun when you're in a studio recording, which I read somewhere else in another interview is not necessarily your favorite things to do. That you prefer to play live.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? You're right. But you're right. And I'll add to that. In that recording, we did that album with David Bianco. He just passed away recently, but I've worked with him a couple times in the studio, and he's just legendary guy who's worked with so many artists, and he's just the most, like, just class act. So he made it fun. And I think for me, it's not the studio that's the problem. It's me. You know, it's my anxiety, you know, because when you go play live, it's just, that's it. It's live.
Right.
It's just, that's it.
And when you're in the studio, I guess it's a little more like regimented, or you feel like everything has to be perfect.
Yes, it's that microscope thing. I've had some great engineers who get it, where they're like, if we don't get it in the first couple takes, we'll come back to it, you know, because otherwise you get into that vortex of just over and over, and you're second guessing yourself and all that stuff. So.
And that never works out for anybody. Yeah. When might we expect to see you headlining at like Landers Brew or something?
Ooh, we will see. We will see. One of the reasons I haven't like kind of mentioned any of this yet is because I had an injury. I get migraines from noise.
Okay.
So I'm slowly getting back there, but I can't play like I want to play live.
I see.
So that's one of the things that's kind of holding me back from that.
Okay.
And why I haven't just gone and played, even just playing covers or just playing fun. And on top of that, I'm not an acoustic singer-songwriter type, you know? So, but I was just talking with a friend of mine about the idea, and again, I don't want to be one of those people that says something and doesn't do it. This is just something we've talking about, is the idea of kind of like healing music and going into that realm.
Sure.
You know, and kind of that might be the steps to take to get back into it.
Right.
Is starting with that.
Exactly. And get it like, I don't know what you would call that. It's kind of like putting your toe in the water and just seeing how it works, and getting your system back into a place where it doesn't become debilitating.
Right. Yeah. And until then, it's not like, I've been experimenting with different tones and things like that, and we're kind of using synths and things like that to kind of go from there.
Right.
And I've started practicing with friends just for fun, and I'm like, you know, I have to work. I'm working around earplugs and that kind of stuff that I never used to use, and you know, it's just it's a process.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that one's kind of like.
But you're doing it smart,
you know,
because even though as much as you love it, you recognize how detrimental it could be to your health. So you're doing it. You're aware, and you're doing it in a smart way.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you should be doing to take care of yourself. I mean, that's why you're here to begin with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I wanted kind of peace and quiet to get out of, not to get out of Hollywood. You know, I love Hollywood. I'm always going to love Hollywood. But that was one of the reasons for the healing, was to get some quiet. And that's also one of the reasons I kind of started focusing on camping and things like that, versus I still go to shows. I had to ease my way in and going to outdoor shows and these, you know, kind of things. So it's just been a journey for those kind of things. But that's why I haven't been out playing for a little while.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Believe it or not, we've come to the end. But before you leave, I would love it if you would give me 4 numbers between 1 and 50.
Okay. Let's go for 4. Since I just said 4.
Okay.
2, 8, and 20.
All right. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that the answers to these questions can be found on Patreon. And if you would like to hear Kim's answers to these questions, you can sign up to be a Patreon supporter by going to desertladydiaries.com and clicking on the support page and signing up for the Patreon option. I really appreciate my generous Patreon supporters. You chose... What do you think about when you're alone in your car? What's the last gift you gave someone? Was there ever a time you thought you wouldn't need to support yourself if you were married? And who is playing you in the movie version of your life? So if you would like to hear Kim's answers to these questions, again, go out to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a Patreon supporter. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like to help support it, it's easy to do. Head over to desertladydiaries.com and click on the support tab. Once there, you'll see the options to support using Patreon or PayPal. If you want to make a donation but you don't have a PayPal account, you don't need to. Just follow the PayPal link and they will ask you for your debit or credit card information. I've been using PayPal for years and it's super secure. Support of just $5 a month through Patreon gives you access to the Diary Unlocked content, which is exclusive to the folks supporting the podcast through Patreon. Any amount helps, and I am so grateful for your generosity. And I have a shout out this week to Andrew M. Thanks so much for signing up for the weekly newsletter. And here's Jean-Paul to tell you a little bit about Simultaneous Times.
Science fiction stories and interviews blasting straight out of the Mojave Desert and beyond. Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times Podcast. Free to stream on your favorite podcast player. Find out more at spacecowboybooks.com. And be sure to visit our store in Joshua Tree, California.
See you next week. Thanks so much for listening.